Would you like to learn about agentic AI and how it relates to generative AI architectures? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Michael Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I am joined by AI expert David Linthicum. Today, we're going to be discussing agentic AI. We'll talk about how it works, how it relates to generative AI architectures. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I've been an architect now for about 25 years in every kind of architect role you can think of. And David joins us with about 35 years of architect experience in cloud and AI. So David, would you like to say a few words, introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about the topic?
Yeah, Dave Linthicum. I've been working with AI for a long time, since 1985 when I was doing Lisp programming. Focused on is an architectural pattern for a long time. I saw AI go in, come out, go back in. Now it's out again as a technology everybody's moving to. Also skilled in cloud architecture and kind of how to bring it all together and make it work for the business. So that's what I'm all about.
Love that. Making it all work for the end business. That's the key goal here. So David, what is agentic AI?
It's basically AI it's AI with autonomy, the ability to build AI as a series of agents. It could be as many as one agent, or it could be as many as 1,000 agents. And it's really kind of what's old is new again. We've been building AI agents for a long time. We knew quickly that we could do self-contained agents. We'd put them on devices, we put them in vehicles, things like that would carry out a specific task. And now everybody's re-looking at that, and it's coming back in terms of a pattern of architecture and how to leverage AI. So the beauty of it is that the agents are going to have autonomy. They're able to run any number of places. You can run them on the same server. You can run them on different servers. You can run them on devices. They don't need high-powered computers, so they don't necessarily need GPUs, but they can certainly use GPU-based servers. But the AI agent can have a persona. It has a purpose. It has behaviors. It has storage, things. It has a knowledge base that it's able to build, which is unique to that particular agent. The way I like to explain it, imagine you building a company and you're hiring different employees with different skills. So the agents would be the employee within the company that have a particular skill. Someone's an accountant, someone's a HR person, things like that. So they carry on a set of knowledge and a set of behaviors and a persona around a particular task and doing a particular task. They can work autonomously. In other words, they can work unto themselves. They have their own goals and objectives that you give them, so they know how to behave. They know how to learn from their experiences and know how to learn from other data. They can leverage LLMs, which is their link to generative AI. They can also contain a small language model, normally within the agent. And they also are able to work in a multi-agent system. So in other words, we can have hundreds of agents that are coming together, all with different personas, all with different roles, all with different tasks that are able to carry out a certain part of the business. And so instead of building a large monolithic AI system where all the knowledge exists centrally and all the behaviors exist centrally, this is a better way to architect some things because we're able to have the flexibility of having these agents run any number of places. They're able to scale into itself through distribution. And by the fact that they carry out a particular activity, they're very componentized unto themselves. And they are also able to work together as a team to carry out a particular task, doing a workflow, doing inventory control, doing supply chain integration. So it's an architectural pattern and kind of another way of deploying AI that provides you with some better choices and some better way to deploy AI. And its interest right now in the industry is the fact that everybody's looking at more tactical deployments of generative AI. So, and they like the agentic model, even though it's been around for a long period of time. New companies like Crew AI are coming into the business that are allowing you to have very cool toolkits for building and deploying these systems. They're very affordable. They're very neat. It's a very cool architecture when you get into it because it's, kind of self-explanatory into itself. So organizations, specifically the technology industry, is starting to move in this direction. And of course, the enterprises are following suit. It's not necessarily moving away from generative AI, but the ability to deploy generative AI using another mechanism that's going to be more advantageous for the business. And that's all it is. It's another architectural option. That certainly doesn't mean we're not going to build small language models and large language models using monolithic type architectures where the data and the knowledge base are bound together, at least conceptually. But the ability to open that up a bit so we have more architectural flexibility and how we build these things. But the functionality of the end states are much the same. We're just doing it differently.
It makes sense creating a team of these AI systems. So I'm thinking of a healthcare environment. Maybe I have some AI when someone calls the call center that routes them to the right person. Now, when I go to look at a patient's labs, maybe it notices a trend. It looks at, for example, the hemoglobin and hematocrit, and then the MCH and MCV and MCHC, and it points to an anomaly, and it suggests, hey, wait, there may be an iron deficiency or a B12 deficiency. At the same time, you've got another agent that's helping a radiologist actually look at, or the ER physician look at a scan before it gets confirmed by the radiologist. And the radiologist could use help from this. So I kind of like the idea. By having these little mini systems, each taking part in a different part of the business workflow, it could do a lot. So what goes into this? What goes into architecting these things? What needs to be thought about?
Yeah, what we need to do is just kind of figure out how you're going to separate the work and how you're going to define these different personas. So in other words, if you're looking at something which is a macro problem we're trying to solve with AI, say supply chain integration, but it can be radiology management, clinic management, things like that. We know there's lots of complex things that come into that, and your ability to break those things up into their own individual autonomous concept gets to really kind of the heart of what we're doing. One of the things we do in my AI architecture class is we read a use case and we learn how to break it down into certain functionalities or certain personas. And the way to think about it, if I was going to hire a bunch of people to carry this out manually, what would they need to know and what kind of skill sets would we have? And that's how you define the personas of the systems. Sometimes there's going to be 6, sometimes there's going to be 60, depending on the problem you're looking to solve. Now, one of the things, just adding to your use case, which I thought was great, we can also have an agent that's responsible, that's assigned just for us, the patient. And if you notice with the new iOS 18 release, if you carry an iPhone, you're going to have an Agentic AI agent that's running on your phone, which is responsible for carrying things out for you. So in other words, it knows how you book appointments, it knows how you schedule things, it knows when you need to travel. It's able to keep a couple of steps ahead of you and basically automating things like your little personal assistant. In a healthcare world, they're looking to use that by assigning those to a patient. So you'll have an agent that runs on your phone or runs on your computer or runs on your watch that is able to, in essence, be your advocate for the healthcare system. So it is going to be communicating with the radiologists, with the physicians, with the GPs, with labs, with pharmacy, to make sure that your priorities are being thought of in terms of how all these agents are operating one to another. So we as human beings have a tendency to not necessarily be able to focus on lots of things at once, and it was going to be able to do that. And it's not a revolutionary technology unto itself. We've had agents for a long period of time, and even AI agents. But what is that we have the architectural acceptance. We're able to deal with this great deal of flexibility. We're able to do these piece parts and move them off into certain areas to carry things out on your behalf. So it's completely flexible. We're able to mix and match the use of agents. We're able to assign them to people, assign them to trucking, assign them to logistics, assign them to a device, assign them to a vehicle. And they're able to carry out certain things in their own time with their own set of objectives, their own personality, their own personas, their own use of data, and their own knowledge models. So the cool thing there is once these things are working together, they're able to learn based on those experiences. So the analogy I like to use is, again, a company. We're able to hire lots of people that have different experiences that come together as a team, that are able to do things as a team to a greater good. They're able to carry out things as a force multiplier because they're able to work well together. These agents are able to learn from each other. They're able to learn how to interact. They're able to change their personas and change their behaviors based on trial and error, and knowing that, well, I can go deal with the logistics system to pass this problem off to them, and they're going to be much better at dealing with that than the inventory system, which was the wrong decision to make. And we as human beings don't even have to deal with that. That autonomously goes on in the past. So they They learn together, they learn individually, and they get better as a team. Of course, AI is the big part of it, and they're using generative AI. They're able to have discussions. They're able to have natural language processing. They're able to run chatbots that can communicate with human beings. They're able to be leveraged via API capabilities. So this really kind of gets into the ultimate where we're looking to take architecture, where something is going to be built with the ability to change and the ability to grow, but not necessarily grow in the fact that we have manual architects and developers that come in and have to redevelop stuff at each every time. But the fact of the matter is, once we launch these things, they're still going to have to be augmented from time to time, but they're largely able to build on their own capabilities, learn from their own experiences, very much like human beings. So the value of that is thinking for the different business applications for it. Obviously, logistics management, supply chain integration. You just mentioned clinician management. I hope I don't think that's the word for it, but the ability to work in the healthcare industry, the ability to work in retail, have agents that are assigned to particular customers if you're on a particular website. So they're able to focus just on what your expectations are, what your needs are, what your hobbies are, what you like to do, things like that. React in a proactive way, provide yourself with a better experience. So just a multitude of applications that we have. And in essence, it's going to be able to take AI to the next level and put it into an architectural framework where we're going to have the flexibility. So utilization of generative AI in a way that's going to provide more flexibility, more capability, and the greatest thing is the ability for it to, you launch it and it's able to take care of itself. It's able to grow itself.
Yeah, that's what I don't think a lot of people realize. These systems can actually continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue to train. So what we see now is not exactly what we're going to see in the future. These things are going to rewrite themselves to a certain degree, and they're going to learn. And when we have more power that can actually be put into this, these systems will be able to do a lot more.
Yeah, and it's a great thing about it. You remember, we're building something that is going to create the goal of backing up a bit. The goal of automation was to remove the human beings from having to do stuff manually, the ability to automate processes that are repetitive.
Mhm.
And we use automation all the time, whether we know it or not. And the ability for businesses to automate more of those processes has got them to a much more better state, a much more optimized state. We're able to carry things out in a repeatable way over and over again by writing application code that allows us to do this thing in a sequential way. Well, this will provide that capability and build on the automation concept, but also build on the fact that we don't need to get in every nook and cranny of these things. So be able to carry out and grow and expand their knowledge and expand their capability and expand their ability to do their jobs better. Obviously, we need to monitor it. The architects are still a big part of launching and developing these systems. The tools, fairly new. People are just getting their feet wet with those things. But the ability to remove the fact that we're always redeveloping stuff and refixing stuff. So it'll have the automation and capabilities of fixing and redeveloping itself to adjust itself to a better way of doing something, constantly improving stuff. And that will bring much more value back to the business. So I think that the businesses that kind of figure that out and use it as a true force multiplier for the businesses are the ones going to be able to take things to the next level. That doesn't mean building a big, LLM, like ChatGPT. I always see that people tell me, oh, well, I want to have ChatGPT for my bank. Well, ChatGPT takes $12 million to train and takes 12 days to train the system. And you don't necessarily want to play around with that. The tactical use cases and the tactical use of AI to solve particular problems and your ability to contain these things in a series of agents and the ability to have those agents work with monolithic systems and traditional systems, things like that, will be able to augment the use of that. So it will make AI much easier to consume, less expensive, much more optimized, and be able to bring much more value back to the business. So we're learning as we're going. AI revolution started a couple of years ago with the whole generative AI stuff. We're using the existing tools and the technologies that we built over the last 30 years, inclusive of agents. So this is coming back into popularity as a pattern of architecture because of the value we're able to get, the value it's able to bring back to the business. And the fact of the matter is that we're not asking businesses to spend $100 million on each of the systems out there. We're asking businesses to spend a few $1 million on systems you can build within less than 6 months that are able to pay for themselves in the first month or two of operation. And that's what the businesses want. And I think that's going to really inflect AI much more than anything else we saw in the last couple of years.
Yeah, they have actually to get a return on their investment from these projects. And I guess all this goes back to all other architecture concepts. What do you need that agent to do? What's the perfect workflow for it? How is it going to properly fit into the company and its business architecture? Will be the secret to getting it right, David?
That'll be the secret to getting it right. And the key to it is design, architecture, planning, forethought. And that becomes even more important with these things. You have to remember, you're creating an instance of something that's going to be built. So you're not going to have you don't need to constantly control the building of something throughout its entire life cycle. So the ability to figure out how these things interact, how they function one to another, how they benefit from their coexistence with other agents, how they benefit from existing systems, how they're able to learn as they go, how they're able to maintain data, how they're able to carry out specialized processing, dealing with security and governance that's really kind of associated with all this stuff, is something that's going to take an incredible amount of intelligence. And the architects and the people who are basically going to build these things and do the strategy and do the planning are going to be in vast demand because we're missing those people in the marketplace right now. We just don't have enough of them. I just wrote an article and stuck it out on LinkedIn, and reading Gartner, McKinsey, O'Reilly, we're seeing architectural failures at a rate we've never saw before with any other technology deployment. It's at 80% based on everybody's estimates. People that when they launch these systems, they don't deliver value back to the business, which is considered a failure. So we got to figure out how to do this stuff better, how to use it in a much more pragmatic way, get much smarter about using this technology. And you look at the fundamental reason why these things failed, it was because lack of talent within the organizations able to take them to the next level. And by the way, that included consulting firms who are being paid to do that stuff. And they just don't exist now. They think they understand what they need to do, and they don't. And I think we need to, focus on decreasing the gap between where we need to be from an understanding and a talent perspective and where we are now.
I completely agree. We really need a lot more architects, the people that have the business acumen, they have the leadership, they can really understand the business's goals, pain points, challenge, be able to re-architect businesses, processes, be able to manage stakeholders, be able to really get under the hood of the business, and then bring in the right team of people to actually design the solution to optimize the business performance. It used to be that 70% of architectures failed, so 80% is a little worse. And every day when I go to LinkedIn and I see someone that's working as an architect and they say, "Today I learned Python," I always get sad. And it's not that I have any issue against people learning Python. It's that if 70 to 80% of architectures fail, it's because people are focused on engineering work, not architecture work. And that's a specialty and a skill. You've got to be able to design the systems for the business needs, not just because it's your favorite tech or the tech is cool or something like that.
Yeah, they're mishiring engineers. So in other words, I do see this in a lot of the job descriptions, and I try to correct as many as I can because some of these things are being written by my friends out there, people I've worked with in the past, because they don't know exactly how to write the job description. So the hard part to do is the planning, the architecture, the ability to configure the technology, and the ability to come up with a technological solution that's going to return the most value back to the business.
Yes.
That's not an easy thing to do. You need lots of experience, lots of understanding, figure out ways to do the processing. And so they have a tendency to hire tactically. They want to hire for the language they're using, hire for the tools they're using, hire for the package they're using, hire for the brand of cloud that they're using. And that's going to lead them to people who have those particular tactical skills, which may not have and almost never have the architecture skills, the planning skills, the strategy skills, the leadership skills that's needed to be successful. And not having those people is the reason that we're running into these issues right now. They understand it's there. We just haven't had it. We're still teaching the world of IT and the world of consulting in that we need to look at more strategic use, more strategic people who are brought into these roles. And so I understand the tactical skills are needed. Someone needs to build this stuff. We do need great AI engineers. We do need great data scientists. But ultimately, the people who do the strategy, the planning, the leadership, build the teams, communicate with the stakeholders, do the planning, bring everything out into the marketplace, and the ability to adjust things as we go is probably one of the more important jobs out there, and that's why it pays well. And I think that I wouldn't go into this line of work just specifically because it pays well, but you're going to look at that as a metric to figure out the amount of value that's coming back to the business. They can't find these people. When they find them, they normally pay them well because they want them to hang around for a
Yes.
long period of time. And right now, we have, best I can tell, we have one qualified candidate that's getting chased by 10 open requisitions in the
Yes.
AI architecture world. People can't find them. And so we need to build them. And we need to have lots of people who will figure that out as a career path to take their gigs to the next level, make a little extra money, but also have an incredibly rewarding job where you're building something, you're creating. And it's one of those jobs where you go to work at 8 a.m. and suddenly it's 6 p.m. time to go home, or 5 p.m. it's time to go home. And it felt like an hour. And
Yeah.
I've had those jobs before, and those are great places to be. And being an architect is that kind of job, because it's always different. It's always changing. It always requires that you take your game to the next level, and also requires you continuously learn. So if you're motivated by that, this is something that's right for you. Certainly, you can have a tactical role, be an engineer, just be a programmer, be a Python developer, maintain LAMP stacks and cloud, and be a cloud security specialist for a particular cloud. Those are going to be needed as well. But we really need people who are able to look at this stuff in a strategic way. So it should be on the career path for lots of people who are interested in that career path.
I think, and I guess we'll end on here, the architect role has been the best thing I've ever done. I did work as an engineer for 3 months, and I said, this is not for me. 25 years ago, I went into that first architect role. And I remember I was with a lot of my relatives. I have a big Greek family, so you get together for a holiday, and it's like the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And everybody says, what did you do? I'm like, well, yesterday I went to work. I had a conversation with an executive. After I did that, I spoke to a technology executive. After that, I took the client to lunch. After that, I went through a few meetings and spoke to a few more people to try and understand what we did. Then I created a team, and then I got everybody together. We started talking, and I took them for drinks. And they're like, no, what'd you really do? I'm like, that's what I really did. And they're like, what do you do the next day? And I said, I gave presentations all day. They were like, but there's got to be more. I'm like, no, we are planners. We are a planning role. And the biggest part of planning is knowing the problem that you're trying to solve, knowing what assets you have right now, and figuring out how to figure out what do you do to augment those assets, and give the business the best needs it has after evaluating all trade-offs. And they were expecting something more technical, but it just wasn't that. This is the reality.
Yeah, and that's because we've used to focus on technical careers in the past, and I think there's a place for that, but the planning aspect of it is completely missing, and something we have to focus on as a discipline. And it's going to get worse because as these systems become more complex, require more understanding of technology, more different reach out to different platforms. Obviously, we've added clouds in the mix as well. It's going to take someone who understands multiple dimensional things and the ability to do planning around abstracting complex topics into things that are going to be consumable by like lots of organizations, and things that can turn into a solution, which is something that's going to be extremely important, if not important today.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, discussing what is agentic AI and how does it relate to generative AI architecture. Hope to have you back on another video real soon.
Great to be here, Mike. Thank you.
If you're interested in developing an architecture career, perhaps an AI architect or a cloud architect or a enterprise architect or a security architect, check in the description of this video. We've got free webinars and free resources to help you in your cloud computing career. You can join us in a free webinar. It'll be live on Zoom. We've got lots of free guides, and go download them and do it, because we want to really help you in your career. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to help you in your cloud computing career, your network architecture career, your security architecture career, or your AI architect career. Take care, and we'll see you soon.